Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the Higher Love with Megan podcast with me, your host, Megan Cooper, a holistic coach and trauma-informed practitioner. Expect conversations where we can broaden the narrative beyond the confines of privileged circles of wellness and self-development. It is my intention to take my listeners on a deep, personal journey of self-discovery, to shift away from band-aid solutions, to instead address the root causes that perpetuate ongoing cycles in your life so that you can discover your authenticity and wholeness and truly heal and thrive. As you truly heal and thrive within yourself, you'll also be journeying together in collective discovery, understanding and uncovering the impact of how collective traumas shape our social structures and institutions and perpetuate the wider ongoing cycles of suffering. Here, diverse experiences are honoured, the status quo is challenged, and together we are fostering a space that stands for healing and thriving for all, so that we may all work, live, and parent better together. As a listener, you are not just here to passively consume. You're an ambassador for deep healing and societal evolutions, ready to engage in thought-provoking, challenging conversations. As your host, I'm committed to providing ever-expansive spaces that inspire us to contribute to a world defined by higher love. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Enjoy.
This episode feels a little bit less formal because I suppose we're sat at the very end of our kitchen table, just having tea, having a little casual chat on a Tuesday morning about big things. So anyway, welcome, Caspar, big inspiration, partner, future husband, all of the things. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm excited about this conversation.
Okay, so let's just dive straight in. And my first question that I wanted to ask you was, out of my journey, my learnings, everything that I've been doing over the past 18 months with my trauma training, the things that I'm becoming increasingly more interested in, the direction that it's taken me personally, professionally within my work, what would you say are the ways that you have recognized change in me over the last 18 months?
Thank you, babe. It's a big question. And I mean, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? Over the past 18 months. It's been a real deep dive for you. It's been a big learning curve, a big transition, and I've seen you grow in so many ways. But I guess the thing that stands out most for me is, how you approach not just the work with your clients, but how your lens of the world has shifted so much in a relatively short period of time. It's not just the way in which you're holding space with your clients and the delicate way in which you're slowly unfolding that inquiry and really reaching the depths of the individual's experience, but it's also the way in which you're taking that approach to how you're interacting with the world around you, which I think is wonderful. We start to look at societal systems and the ways in which our world is set up and how people interact with people collectively as a group, and you start to examine that and the reasons for those particular systems to be in place. And I think it's given you a new level of curiosity and compassion, really, is the title here. Your levels of compassion have risen a lot, and I find it's been wonderful to see you grow in this way.
Thanks, babe. Well, that wasn't meant to be an invitation for all of my words of affirmation, but my love language words of affirmation is very topped up. Yeah, it's just interesting because whenever we go on, I guess, our own individual exploration, of course, it does affect the people closest to us. And I mean, we live together, we spend a lot of time together, and we obviously, do deep dive on these topics a lot. So it's interesting to see yourself through somebody else's eyes, the people that know you best. And I'm curious then to ask, in what ways you feel like that has changed you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel that through your own inquiry into self and how you're working with your clients and how you're seeing the world around you, and that's this new lens that has been kind of curated over the past 18 months, it's definitely through our conversations made me slow down and take stock and really consider actually how I'm showing up in my world, and the types of conversations that I'm having with people, and how I see, the world around me. And I guess what's come online more for me, it already existed to a level, but it's definitely increased, is when I see people and witness behavior that in the past that I may have condoned. Now I see that with a higher level of compassion and love. I look to that, and let's say it's a certain type of behavior on the street that is it's just, I guess, abrasive. And usually in the past I might have looked at that person and passed a lot of judgment. However, now I would look to that person and be, well, what would the what led this person to express themselves in this way? Like, why are they showing up like they are? Like, what's underneath this, boisterous or violent or aggressive behavior? Okay, what's underneath that? Where's it come from, and what need is it filling? And I guess that's how it's really affected me. Is my levels of compassion as well have definitely leveled up. And I would say that, yeah, I'm a more open and understanding and curious person. And obviously by proxy, I feel like I've picked up so much of what you've learned, just because, outside of your studies, you're bringing in topics and we're having conversations about them. And that's really opening my mind and expanding my mind into areas that I haven't in the past considered. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey for myself as well. And I definitely feel like I've learned a lot through proxy.
Is there anything that challenged you, or anything that you struggle with in regards to everything that you've perhaps been privy to?
Yeah, I guess what I have struggled with is just witnessing my own judgment, and actually just being comfortable with that, and understanding that, okay, well, where does that come from, and why does that judgment exist? And also just being kind of okay with it, and not being compassionate with myself, and just saying, okay, well, I witness it, it's there, it doesn't make me bad, but I do have the ability to kind of take a bit of a step back and start to change the story, and look and examine, where that judgment may have come from. And it's all just a work in progress, really.
Is there a specific example that you can think of?
Yeah, so a couple of times, and I guess when we're moving around in our day to day, we're usually going to familiar places, that might be like to the park, to the beach, to the coffee shop, to particular classes and particular spaces, and we're going to usually encounter like the same people, the same types of people in the places that we visit, right? And we usually select those based on, like, okay, well, what feels good for us, what environments feel good for us. So we're often in our like day to day, I would say, operating in a relatively like controlled way. We're not exposing ourselves to environments that are potentially like going to trigger us, maybe in a train station or somewhere like public. But we go to the sauna a lot. We're both Megan and I are members of this hotel leisure centre down the road. It's a space where people come together, and there's a lot of conversation. We've got members that we know there, and we've made friends with over time. And it's
like a think tank.
It's a think tank. It's a wonderful space. We go there and we have excellent conversations, and it's really diverse, and it's, there's some wonderful people down there, and often, people who are challenging kind of ways of thinking, which is really exciting. And I always leave that place like feeling pretty full. I feel great, and it's a nice place to come together and have conversation. But on one particular occasion, I remember I was I was on my own in the sauna, and it's got a pane of glass so you can look out and you can kind of look across the pool and across the kind of leisure centre area. And there's a guy who's kind of coming towards the sauna, and I look at him and he's got covered in tats. I've got a lot of tattoos, but covered in, you know, yeah, lots of kind of like pretty aggressive looking tattoos. I think he had like some tattoos on his face, had a sort of skin, quite tight haircut, sort of fade, and pretty big guy, kind of walks with a very kind of full manner. And, I immediately, my mind, I kind of jumped to like, this is the type of person, I kind of pigeonholed him really fast. And he came in and he sat down. We didn't say anything for a minute or so, and I initiated the conversation. I asked him, "Are you a member here, or are you just visiting Brighton and staying in the hotel?" And as soon as he started speaking, he had such a softness to his voice and such a gentleness about him, and we just had the most wonderful conversation. And I was really moved by what he shared with me, really moved. And it really made me think about like how I look at certain types of people, men maybe who look a certain way, who do talk a certain way. And it stopped me in my tracks. And now I really feel like, okay, sometimes when you see groups of those guys together and they're sort of laddie and like loud and boisterous, I kind of think, oh, that's that's not the type of people that I want to hang out with, and they must be X, Y, and Z. Their values are X, Y, and Z. But that's just a judgment, right? And I've really started to witness that myself. It's like I can look at people and label them, and actually it's about dropping those labels. It's about letting those labels go and understanding that, on the individual level, there is so much depth potentially there, and not to just write people off, and that actually happened, that's happened a couple of times, particularly with men for me. And so that's been a real big learning for me. But it's also opened up a lot for me as well. It's like, I love to talk to people. I love to get into conversation with, whoever's open to having conversation. I'm up for it, right? But it's really opened up a new kind of dimension there around it's not being selective of the types of people that I have conversation with. It's just, dropping my bias, I guess, and then just getting into connection with anybody, and then just also witnessing, any kind of labeling that I have, and also looking to let that go as well.
Can you see that labeling showing up anywhere else?
Potentially, but I don't think in a negative way. There's definitely labeling where I'm like, these type of people, they have X, Y, and Z values, but not in a sort of not in a way that is potentially bad. They're good values. I definitely find, sort of lad culture and big groups of, drunk guys, that's challenging for me. But again, when we talk about judgment and we talk about needs, for example, it's like there is a need there. There's a need for connection. There's a need for camaraderie in some sense. And it's kind of, guys coming together and supporting football teams. It's sort of tribal in some sort of essence. So, that is filling a need in some way. So there's also that to consider. So yeah, it's just kind of it's looking at the judgment that I may have, and then inquiring into that.
In what way, over the last 18 months, with the work that I've been deep diving into and you've kind of experienced through a process of osmosis, in what ways do you feel like that has impacted our relationship?
Yeah, that's a really beautiful question. One thing I've noticed, and we were talking about this, I think it was yesterday morning, we went for a long beach walk, and one thing that I've really noticed has been it's been an amazing kind of uptick in our communication, I guess. And you've really modeled this for me, is about when you're triggered, for example, you're able to just talk to what's in the room. I'm experiencing fill in the blank. And it's made me think that fill in the blank. And without pointing a finger, without saying that, you've made me feel this way, and it might be, and because of this is the story that I'm telling myself. And when you're able to share vulnerably in such a way that is very neutral, I'm able to share with you vulnerably, and we're able to come into connection a lot quicker. We're able to speak to what's in the room and then communicate in a way that we're both feeling like we're heard and seen, and then we can reconnect a lot faster. And I don't know, would it be useful to bring in an example for your listeners? So for example, I'll bring in a kind of a 4 out of 10.
Probably best, or you can hear us do it again.
I'll bring it 4 out of 10, just for ease. I don't want to put Megan on the spot here. So
I'm up for it. Let's go.
So it was probably, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, and we had planned on, it was towards the end of the day, and we wanted to go, it was a beautiful sunny day, and we wanted to go out for a walk in the evening and get home in time to get dinner on. And so I'm quite kind of rigid with my time. So
Capricorn.
I want to make sure it's like we're leaving the house, we've got to go now, in order to, we don't want to be home too late, right? And so I'm ready, I've got myself ready. I'm like, keys in hand, wallet, phone, keys, everything's ready to go, and I'm ready to leave. And I asked Megan, "Come, babe, let's go. It's time to leave the house." And she's on her phone, right? And not really paying attention, and in her world, taking care of some communications with clients. And I took that, I got angry and I got triggered, and I was starting to get frustrated. And when Megan came off the phone, said, okay, I'm ready to go, I by that point was like I was pretty frustrated and angry, and I can get a little bit short when I get frustrated. And Megan said, what's going on here? And I was like, nothing, it's fine, don't worry about it, let's just go. And she says, well, you're clearly upset. And I said to her, well, you being on your phone when you've committed to have connection time with me, I've made it mean that this is more important. Your phone time is more important than us having connection time, which has made me upset. So what I was able to, what I've been able to do there is actually just, okay, witness the frustration, but kind of go a little level deeper there. It's like, why am I actually frustrated here? Like, what's causing this? And it's not anger. It's actually just, I'm sad. So there's sadness there, and I'm making this situation mean that Megan cares more about her work than she does about me. And I shared that with her. And then she shared back with me saying, well, do you know what? I actually wanted to just get these messages out of the way so that when we do go and have time together, I'm able to be 100% present with you, rather than like thinking, oh God, I've got to get back to so-and-so, and I really ought to send this message, and not being present with me when we're going off on our walk. So I feel that level of communication and being able to name what's in the room for us has really helped us in the way that we communicate together as a couple. And I guess in the past, I may have got frustrated and then just held on to that frustration, you know, potentially for like an hour, 2 hours, just until it kind of subsides naturally after like a laugh or something. But you know, the day we could have run into a situation where it's like, I'm angry and short and frustrated, or frustrated mainly, and we decide to go out on our walk, and it's just, you know, then just becomes that friction, and then Megan gets upset and dysregulated because I'm dysregulated, and we go for our walk and it's shit. We're just like angry at each other, and like that, I guess, you know, in the past might have happened. You know,
Yeah.
we're just kind of a bit kind of like scratchy at each other, and so yeah, I just think that that's been such a wonderful and beautiful learning curve and lesson, and it's just helped us come back into communication and connection really quickly, and yeah, just be very open and vulnerable with each other. And you know, sometimes resolution doesn't come automatically. You know, you might need a timeout, or you know, often say that I love you, but I don't really like you that much right now.
So that's you last night, actually, didn't I?
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a beautiful tool for a couple to have, just because, you know, we can come back into connection and come back into love really quickly and easily, and
And I think you learn more about one another as well.
totally, yeah.
Like me understanding more about how your mind or your nervous system works, so that I can then be more aware of that. And I think also, you know, because it's happened the other way around. I mean, a few weeks ago, you know, you were calling me from the other room, like, babe, babe. I was like, what does he want? Like, we're doing things. And then went in, you were like, babe, you know, I'm telling myself a story and that's made me feel really ashamed of myself. Like I'm feeling a lot of shame right now, which was amazing for you to feel safe enough and vulnerable enough within, and feel enough safety within your vulnerability to be able to share that with me, so that I can then support you with that and provide more safety for you,
Yeah,
as the partner.
yeah.
And also have, you know, a lot of respect for you, because it's not easy to share those parts of ourselves.
And I remember that, yeah, that was a tough one for me, and there were a lot of stories running around my mind, and it's so easy to buy into those, and you kind of tumble down this, you know, the pit. And when your partner turns around to you and says, well, you know, is everything okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You know, fine. I'm fine. And actually I'm not. And you know, there is some stickiness there, and there's, you know, it's the ability to, yeah, show up vulnerably and share your experience and explore why that's there. Like, where did it come from? You know, what programming or kind of maladapted ways of being and behavior from our childhood, adolescence, or potentially like, you know, early adulthood has kind of entrenched itself and then kind of played out. And I think being able to kind of capture those times and just hold space for them and really kind of inquire as to like why shame existed for me at that point. Like, where does that come from? Like, what story, what belief system has perpetuated that, and how can we look to kind of loosen the kind of foundations in which that has rooted itself in?
I think it's also beautiful within that, when there is sufficient safety established within your relationship, that you can share your shame, you know, the stuff that feels sticky, because I think it's an invitation to feel, or it's an opportunity to feel more loved. It's an opportunity to feel more loved, and it's an opportunity for me to love you more, because it means that I love you in your shame. Like I love you in your anger. I love you in, you know, whatever iteration of your emotional experience is, which is amazing for me to feel, you know, for me to feel so in a place of love for somebody, that I love all aspects of them. You know, that's loving someone in their wholeness, right? Not just in your, like, you know, when you present this particular aspect of yourself, and I just love you there.
Yeah.
You know, it's beautiful to have the opportunity to love somebody in their wholeness,
Yeah.
and to feel loved
Yeah.
in all of your wholeness.
Completely. And, you know, it's like you say, it's not a, you know, Megan will only love me if I'm in my masculine, in my like warrior or king energy, you know. It's there's I will feel love and accepted and heard and seen, even in, you know, even when I'm going through it. And that's a beautiful thing as well, that just adds so much depth to, you know, to our relationship.
This has been a huge part of my work, you know, over the last 6 months, of going through the compassionate inquiry mentorship, where you're really looking at all of the sub personalities that show up within your relationship with clients. So your inner rescuer, your inner helper, your inner pleaser, all these aspects of kind of all these parts of you that are unresolved from your own childhood, that then show up when, you know, if the client is in quote unquote like not getting a result, or the client doesn't know what to do, or, you know, the client is going through a lot of pain, and then your parts step in, like your inner fixer steps in, or your pleaser, or your helper, or your advice giver, or your teacher, or your explainer, you know, whatever it is. My inner fixer has taken a huge existential like healing experience over the last 6 months. And I think that has also really, for me, has also penetrated our relationship, in that, you know, for example, like, let's just use that example again of when you shared with me that you were experiencing a lot of shame. I think that in the past, my inner fixer would have then stepped in. Don't feel shame, like, you're okay. Well, you know, here's all the reasons to not feel shame. And instead of just holding that space, and of course, you know, we say the reassuring things that our partner, you know, needs to hear, or, you know, that we just naturally say in partnership or friendship. But I think also getting to a point where we're able to just be with our partner's experience and just hold you in that shame. Like, it's okay that you're feeling like that, and how can I support you in that, so that then comes from you. And I know that can be a dynamic that shows up a lot in like male female, well, masculine feminine relationships, where, you know, it's that classic, the man always steps in trying to fix it for the woman, that type of thing. And I know that women find that really annoying. But I recognize it in myself as well. Like, my own inner fixer steps in, and I'm recognizing more and more that I'm able to, you know, when a friend, when a family member, when my partner has an issue, I feel that need to step in to fix, because it's like an urge, and it's been there for 35 years. So, you know, it's these parts of us, they can be pretty strong, but then I recognize the kind of somatic feeling of that. And I'm able to then step back into myself and just be like, you know, how can I support you in that? Or what do you need within that? And then that gets put back onto you, as opposed to then kind of us getting in like another tussle, which is actually just our sub-personalities being in a relationship with one another.
Yeah.
So I think like that has been another aspect of perhaps our communication. I think as well, something that really comes up for me is when you've got two people within a relationship who are triggered, you've actually, because the trigger is seldom just to do with the situation, it's actually to do with what you're making it mean based on your past experiences and the unresolved pain, wounding, insecurities that you still have, which are then brought into the equation. So you're not really just dancing with like two adults in the conversation. You've actually got your two adult selves, and then your two inner children, or like two inner teenagers in the room. So actually, when we're in, you know, a conflict, it's not necessarily just us that's kind of warring with one another. It's like our inner children, like actually battling it out, or like our inner teenagers, like slanging stuff at one another.
Totally.
And I think that's been really helpful for me to recognize, like, okay, it's actually not me that's conversing with Casper right now. It's my inner child that is 100% in the driving seat. And then I need to look after her, or I need to be able to communicate to you, okay, I'm triggered. It's reminding me of this. and I'm right now feeling like really unsafe, really upset, like really like down, whatever it is. And then you can also hold space in a way for like my inner child. It's like we welcome her into the room. Or like with you, when you're like, you know, grumpy about something, it's like your inner teenager's in the room or something. And then you can change with a little bit of kind of time and patience the way that you might then handle that part that is showing up, as well as your adult partner in the room. Does that make sense?
Totally. And just having that level of awareness and just kind of radioing into, okay, something's going on here. Let's just slow things down a little bit. Like, what are you making this mean? And what needs to be said? And what story are you telling yourself? And then creating that space for inquiry, because I think it's that like unfolding in like the dynamic unfolding in like every day, that's where we get to like really, you know, sharpen our tools. You know, it's in the kind of the school of life where we actually get to like, you know, create transformation in real time, where we can, instead of just buying into like repetitive patterns of relationship or communication, we can actually like create space and understanding, and we can really grow as people together, you know, kind of shine each other's souls a little bit.
Well, I think it's that whole like what was wounded in relationship then heals in relationship too. And you know, I think the relationship that we have where we've established a lot of safety and a lot of understanding, it means that these parts of ourselves can show up and be held space for, and that's okay. And, you know, just another example that was really coming up for me was we used to have this dynamic where, and it's the same old pattern, right? And someone said to me once that a couple is only ever arguing about the same thing every time. It's just like it's wearing a different outfit, but it's the same argument that you're having over and over and over again. And there was this pattern that we used to fall into. So I would get triggered by something and I would go kind of like full pelt, fight or flight. And then I'd snap straight into my freeze response. So then I wouldn't be able to communicate at all. Like I'd be totally mute and go totally quiet. And then you would be asking me, you know, what's wrong? What's wrong? Speak to me. I wouldn't be able to speak. And then you would get angry because you thought that I was giving you the silent treatment. But actually what's happening is I'm totally frozen. So then you're getting kind of more frustrated with me. And I'm feeling more and more and more unsafe, unable to communicate completely. And then you would slip into your shame response where you're making it mean I'm a bad partner, all of the things. And then I would eventually have to come out of my freeze and then comfort you and hold space for your shame. And then I'm going into my fixing mode. And then it's all just a big mess and all parts of ourselves are present within that dynamic, which is fine, but it was quite messy and quite time consuming and energy consuming. And then when we both studied more about the nervous system, we came to understand, you know, what happens in our fight or flight, how that feels for us, what happens in our freeze and how that feels for us. And I was able to be like, oh my God, that's what happens. I get triggered by something and then I go into my freeze and then I can't communicate with you. So actually with you saying, why aren't you talking to me, blah, 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 it's making me feel more and more and more unsafe. And what I needed and what I was able to communicate from you is when that happens, I feel totally unsafe. So what I need for you to do is to make me feel safer so that I can just start to come out of that and co-regulate with you. And then I can speak to you. And actually that's been really great because now, I mean, I've seen you do it, just like having a bit of a timeout in our life, in what's happening. And you're able to come across and like give me a hug and be like, I love you. You're safe. All is well, nothing's changed, you're okay, and give me a big old hug so that I can just kind of co-regulate to your like mainframe nervous system. And then we can continue the conversation and we don't have to go into then like all other aspects of what would have happened after that. But just like coming back to safety within that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's been that's such a great observation, and I'm really happy that you brought that into the conversation, because that did used to happen. And you asked me that question, like, what's changed in the past 18 months? That's a big thing that's changed, like
huge.
massive. I really feel that, like, and I totally get it. It feels so live for me, just kind of thinking back to it. Megan would go into that shutdown and not talk to me. I'm like, oh, she's giving me the silent treatment. This is shit. And just kind of, then I would get really frustrated and angry. And then I would just kind of go into my, like, not sort of it, I would sort of distance myself, or kind of, I wouldn't call it shut down, but I'd sort of, my sort of grumpy teenager would come in, but I'm just going to sit on the sofa and watch YouTube videos and like ignore Megan because she won't talk to me anymore. And
while she's basically like in a 5-year-old self, just like cowering in the corner, needing love.
Yeah. So that's been so useful, and actually being able to like communicate like what happens for us in particular like conflicts, and how we can like support each other through that is just amazing. So yeah, I see that when I catch, and when Megan goes quiet, I'm like, something's going on here. I think she is in shutdown. And we can just put all like whatever conflicts there, or whatever situations there, and it might not be about you and I. It could be, something else has happened.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you a question, I'm not getting a response. She's gone into shutdown. She's in a freeze response. I'm just going to go over and give her a big hug. We can co-regulate, tell her everything's going to be okay, and we can start to come back into connection, and then talk about the experience and really unpack that. And I get to understand, Megan's emotional response, and the kind of the language of her nervous system, and the recurring stories that come up. So I'm familiar with that stuff now, and vice versa. So we understand each other on an emotional level, rather than just like your kind of surface level of coherence and conversation.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of listening to this and I'm like, this is making it sound like a very easy process, but actually that's taken a lot of work. And even thinking, I guess the work that I've done, training under compassionate inquiry over the last 18 months, me knowing a process to guide myself through, as well as to my clients, when I notice that something's coming up for me, my ability now to, notice that I'm triggered, experience that as a felt sense, as an emotional sense, and then notice the beliefs and the stories that are coming up for me, and then recognizing that's actually got nothing to do with Casper. That's 100% to do with me and the story that I'm telling myself. And actually, oh, I get it. It's about that. It's my inner child wounding. Okay, hold space for that within myself. A lot of the time, I don't even need to unravel something with you. Like, that's something that I can actually do myself. And I think that that's really important as well within relationships, that I think in the past, I have expected my partners to do that for me. Whereas I think what I'm able to now, and I guess that's self-responsibility, right? It's noticing I'm triggered. So that's my stuff. And yes, I can communicate something to you of like, actually, this is what I need, or something like that. So I can, just so that we can bring that into our relationship and, be better with one another. But I think that that's an ownership piece and a self-responsibility piece, which takes quite a lot of work to get to and to maintain. Would you say?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it takes a level of like understanding oneself, understanding oneself in a relationship dynamic, understanding your partner well, but it does take time. But it takes space as well. It takes the ability to kind of hit the pause button a little bit and just kind of go, right, just gonna like back out of this a little bit and just kind of inquire as to what's going on.
Yeah.
And ask the questions to your partner. And this doesn't necessarily just need to be in partnership. It can be with our friends, it can be with our family, it can be with people that we interact with on a daily basis.
So just changing tack slightly. So with my growing interest in decolonization, anti-racism, collective trauma that exists within our institutions and within our societal systems, how are you finding that?
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I've always been incredibly interested in like how the world works, you know, the systems that have developed over time, societal systems that have developed over time, and, you know, the impact of those systems as they mature or age and mature, and how they kind of dictate how we operate in the world. And, you know, just starting to question them, you know, I always have in a way questioned them, you know, as a young, young man. I guess I was always really interested in kind of, yeah, like how we operate together as a society, and how that's changed over time, and what's had a big impact on how we are. And I've just loved the conversations that we're having, firstly, and then the conversations that you're bringing, you know, to your podcast. And yeah, it's fascinating, and it's wonderful for me to be part of that. And my question to you is, have I helped you kind of form your thinking around these particular topics?
I would say that having conversations about these topics really helps me to explore what my thoughts are, because, you know, it's one thing to be thinking this stuff inside your own head, or like reading books, or, you know, watching content, or, you know, consuming new ideas, or interrogating your own beliefs, which is a big part of this work. You know, the unlearning process and the inner interrogation of the way that our minds have been programmed to be. Me being able to have, like, what's the word? It's like a what board?
Vision board?
No, babe. Me being able to have a soundboard,
like a mood board. I was like,
mood board. Oh, here's my mood board of anti-racism. No, me having a soundboard of gives me a space to interrogate my own beliefs, and also noticing when you say things that then my kind of ear pricks up and I'm like, hang on, that actually I think is part of our programming. And oh, that's something that I do. And I find that really helpful to hear things in a different way, and to have the opportunity to converse about these things, because I think that's part of the unlearning process, right?
Yeah.
Like
challenging assumptions, challenging beliefs.
Challenging assumptions and beliefs, and having those conversations with our family and with our friends and with our partners, because that's how we change, right?
Yeah.
Like, things that I will say to you make you think about something differently, and the opportunity, and vice versa, and the opportunity for me to speak about those things helps me to advance my own challenges to my own thinking. So that, I would say, is one thing.
Would it be useful to bring in an example?
When we talk about purpose and mission, and we see it a lot, I think, online, and it's very much in this kind of, you know, like soul purpose, and like discover your authentic reason for being here. And like, don't get me wrong, I do believe in some capacity that, like, yes, our soul is here to experience something within, you know, this lifetime. Sure. However, there are some things that we might say to our listeners, to our consumers of our space, to people who attend our workshops, or etc., who come from a place of privilege, that we would speak to in regards to mission and purpose. But I wouldn't say to somebody who is experiencing a genocide. Like, I wouldn't be talking about, you know, oh, it's your God-given, you know, it's your God-given purpose to be having to save your children from a genocide. Like, that's what I can't get my head around. And I think that, you know, when you talk about a specific example, I know that you talk about purpose and mission and stuff quite significantly within your work, because you work with, you know, all of your clients are men it's that classic, it's like purpose and mission and reason for being is really, it's significant for all people, but especially, you know, I think within the role of men, within, you know, a lot of society, having purpose, having a mission is important for the men that you work with. But I think a way that we talk about that is really, for me, it's really important that we check privilege when having those conversations.
Totally.
Because, you know, if you are running a workshop about finding your purpose for, you know, a group of men, for example, and you're just, I think, steamrolling through purpose as some kind of like thing that we have to find and, you know, that we get to find and all these things. But if we haven't, I think, brought into the conversation, look, the idea, the way that we're going to be talking about purpose and mission, we're going to be speaking to that with the privilege of actually being able to explore that and checking the language around what we're using so that we are giving more awareness to actually there's a lot of people in the world right now, actually a huge, like high proportion of the world population who don't have so much choice in that, or actually whose purpose it is to just keep their children safe, like, which is probably the best purpose that there is. However, like, you know what I mean? It's like, I think that some of the ways that we talk about these things, there is a lot of privilege intertwined with that language within the space. And I think, you know, you asked me for a specific example, and I know that this has come up for us.
Yeah, it has. And I think that's something which is really affected how I speak to, you know, my small audience and my clients around change. You know, a kind of tagline is, you know, you can create your own reality. You know, that's something that I check myself with now a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't say that to everybody. I think if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you can make change, you owe it to the people who can't. You know, you need to take advantage of that, because there are hundreds of thousands and millions of people across the world who just can't make the types of changes that we can, you know, the people with privilege can. And I think that that's really important to just address.
When you say, I wouldn't say you could create your own reality, you said, I wouldn't say that to everyone. So you would just say it to some people?
As in, like, I probably just wouldn't say it. I wouldn't use that you create your own reality as one of those mic drop messages in my content anymore.
Because I think that is a sticking point for me too, that, and, you know, again, it's like something that we see within the industry, and I know that this has come up on, you know, previous podcast episodes, but there is language that I would use now, like these, you know, a kind of soundbite moments of you create your own reality. It's like there is an essence of truth in that, you know, the thoughts that you have will change the lens through which you're seeing, experiencing the world.
It affects choice.
Yeah, and it affects choice. It affects your nervous system. It affects, like, you know, your neurobiology. It's like there is truth in that. However, I think that I'm just getting myself to a place of like, if I wouldn't say that to everyone, regardless of your socioeconomic status, regardless of your race, regardless of your culture, regardless of like your background, where you are in the world, what you've been through, your levels of trauma, like if I wouldn't say that to everyone, I just don't think I'd say it at all. And if I did, it would be caveated with acknowledging that I am speaking to a specific situation, or acknowledging that I'm speaking to a specific human within this and giving it context. But I think like that's been a sticking point for us of, is this stuff okay to say to, if I'm just going to say it to some people? Like for me as a facilitator, I'm just not happy to really do that anymore.
Yeah. And that's definitely, you know, I know it's a question that you wanted to ask me around how has your work affected, like how I show up as a coach, as a mentor. And I would say that that's definitely been like one of the principal ways that your work has impacted mine. And it is really just kind of checking into the language that I'm using. But coming back to mission and purpose, and I think you're right, I don't think you're right, I know you're right. As men, we want a mission.
Yeah.
We want a mission, we want to feel purposeful. But I think that it's, instead of us being kind of the hyper individualistic kind of success at every, like, success or death type vibe, I think it's about kind of going, well, my mission is to take out or put in more than I take out, or it's to be a beacon of light for my community, or it's to like live in alignment to my values, and those values positively affect people around me. That's a purpose, that there's a lot of mission in that as well. It's like, it doesn't need to be some sort of like capitalistic crusade into like creating the next like huge business. Like, it doesn't need to be that. I think it's just about really defining how we want to be and the effect of that on others, and the positive impact that has on the world around us. And that's how we change or affect change over time, is just by being purposeful in, as men, and how we show up in the world and how that impacts others. And we all have those guys that you look up to and go, God, I respect that person. Like, they just they speak to people in a certain way, they act in a certain way, they have standards, they're committed, they're true to their words. Like, that's what I'm talking about. My mission for me would be to like embody attributes and ways of being that like positively affect all those around me, and for me to be that light.
How do you feel like going forward you would want to create more accessibility, inclusivity, cater for more socioeconomic disparity?
Yeah, I mean,
more diversity. How would you want to bring that into your work?
Yeah, I think where I'm at the moment, I'm kind of just on the cusp of launching a new newsletter and kind of ethos around my coaching, which, as this was kind of coming to fruition, I really checked in with myself and asked myself the question, is this inclusive? And it is. And it's a message for all men, and it's a message, it doesn't matter from like what walk of life, where you're from, like everybody can get on board with this message. And that's my commitment, is to always stay true to that, and to talk in a way that is like for all, and it's not just for the select few. And my one-on-one is going to be for a select group of people who do have the means to be able to pay those higher level of fees. But then I also am going to be creating group programs which are even more accessible, and then content which is free, and content which anybody can access. So I think for my work is definitely about creating kind of levels and being as inclusive as possible. One thing that I'm really keen on bringing online in my day-to-day is finding a way to be able to serve the community here in Brighton. It's something that I had set up when I was operating my gym business in London. I was working very closely with a youth group called XLP, and they are basically a group of mentors that support kids in hard to reach communities in London, helping kids kind of stay out of gangs, stay off the streets, out of violence, and giving them access to recording studios and drama and football clubs, and just kind of picking up the slack where maybe like a lot of community centers have closed down over the past like 15 years, and like that's had a really big impact on the quality of life that kids have in inner city areas. And like I saw that, I was like, I own a gym, and like we run morning, lunch and afternoon classes. We have big chunks of time in our day when our space is empty. So I reached out to those guys and said, look, let's set it up every Thursday from like 1:30 till 3:30. Like the space is open. and I'd have a group of kids come in there, and we'd do lots of like team-based training, and, you know, provided a space for these kids where they could like learn, you know, they could get fit and have fun, but also learn kind of like how to operate in a team, you know. Yeah, they had football and other bits, but like it was a beautiful thing to do, you know. I really loved that, and that was the way that I gave back at that period of my life. And, you know, since leaving London and relocating here to Brighton, it's something that, you know, I want to bring back on, and I'm committed to doing that.
I think that there is a difference, and something that I'm kind of toying with in my mind is the difference between kind of having like an ethos of your brand and your business. Because, you know, everyone's got mortgages to pay, everyone's got bills to pay, everyone's got to put food on the table. So it's actually okay for you to run a business which does cater for people that can afford to pay you a certain amount of money. What I think then the invitation is for the ethos of your brand to not just stop there. So like, you know, again, it's like another beef that I have within the coaching business and coaching industry. It's like, there's so much of this 10K months, 100K a year, make X, you know, blah, 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 six figures, you know, there's so much of that without, which I haven't really seen, the discussion about, you know, addressing socioeconomic disparity and what you're going to do with all that money. Like if you're making, you know, 6-figure, 7-figure salaries, like how are you offering up your business and your services in a way that does support your community, that does support other people who actually can't afford to pay you that top ticket stuff?
Yeah.
And I think that is so important to have in the conversation about within the coaching industry. And also for us to have in mind, because, you know, what you're saying is, yeah, sure, I want my business to function this kind of way, but then I also want to offer myself up in, you know, service-based, community-based way, which if everyone was doing that, things generally could function a lot more positively. Because, you know, you're right, like over the last, you know, however many years, the local authorities have had huge cutbacks. And I think that, you know, we're really moving away from this place of expecting like the government and the council and local authorities to go and run in and fix everything and pay for everything. And we're seeing this, you know, a lot more grassroots community-based stuff happening, which I think is also really positive for everyone's like mental health, emotional health. When we're in this place of service, community, it generally seems to support a kind of more balanced ecosystem within our community around us.
Totally. And I think there's something that is also really present for me in conversations that I've been having recently, is like, we look at the most successful transformational program ever built, ever conceived, is the 12-step program. And a huge part of that program is service.
Yeah.
And so how can we as coaches, we're in service to our clients, but how are we in service to, you know, our broader audience? Is our message inclusive, and where are we in service in our community? Because I feel like it's a very privileged position to be a coach or be a mentor, and it's not just like you turn it on when you're in like face to face with clients. You're there. It's 100%, you know, 24/7. Like it's who you are. You know, and I think that's really important as well. It's just to, without
the spiritual BS of I'm so in service.
Yeah, I just think it's like, well, actually go and do it. Like, let's see it. Like, just show me.
Yeah.
Show me service.
Yeah. So accessibility and inclusivity as the ethos. And then I suppose how that's translated in terms of how you make money through your business. Then I guess that's slightly different. I don't know. Still an idea that I'm working my way through. So we talked about your work and kind of where you're present within that. How do you see my work and my role going forwards?
Yeah, I mean, more recently, and I'm talking in the past sort of 6 months or so, there has definitely been a very significant shift in how you're showing up within, I guess, within your business, and also just what you're interested in and what you're passionate about. And, you know, it really kind of, it really, yeah, kind of builds on what we were just talking about, where, you know, you're wanting to step into a place where you're really kind of disrupting the kind of status quo. You're really, you're creating some impact and some ripples into changing, helping people shift their perspective in like how they see the wellness industry, about like our impact as, people in service. Is it actual service for just some, or is it service for everybody? And really starting to like draw attention to that, which I think is just so needed. It really is. It's so needed. Yes, like us as coaches, facilitators, mentors, practitioners, we need to make money, but also we're in service. And how is that service reflected, to to people who are not paying us, to people who are in our community? And I think you're really drawing attention to that, which is a movement. I think it's so important. And it's easy just to kind of like, through your weeks and months and years as a practitioner, and just kind of go about like the things that are gonna, increase your bottom line, but then not pay attention to the other ways that you can be of service and create impact and to the world around you. So I think that that's been a major shift. And just, I'm not privy to like what goes on within your client sessions, obviously.
For clarity's sake.
Just to clarify, like that's never shared. But like I know from the feedback that you share with me from your clients, the work that you're having is like incredibly impactful. Like it is amazing. And like, I know that it's just kind of, you were already great, but the way in which you're operating now is just is exceptional. And also the feedback that you're receiving from your mentors on the compassionate inquiry course is like, it's phenomenal. But it's like, I would expect that, you're a very studious, very intelligent woman. So it's just kind of, it's to be expected. But yeah, I think it's wonderful to see. And it feels like this real like strength coming through as well, this real like mission. We talk about mission, it's like, this is your mission. It's like, my mission is to just shift perspective, help kind of, bring a certain level of like awareness to what we're missing as an industry, so that people can, so we can support others, like, so we can actually like make a fucking difference.
Yeah.
And that's a purpose, that's great. And it's, I know that it's uncomfortable for you at points, because you're shaking shit up, and people are going to potentially be pretty triggered by what you're saying. But hey, like, that's what it's about.
Purpose. Throw
shit.
Throw paint at the wellness industry.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Anything else that you want to say?
I'm very proud of you.
Oh.
Yeah, you're a wonderful woman. I love you very much. Thanks,
babe. I like you. You can stay. No, thanks for your time. As always, it's really great to, as we were saying within the episode, to help, it's always good to just kind of sit down and reflect on time that's passed, things that have happened, changes that have been made, and, further intellectual and, felt understanding of these topics. I really hope that both you and I can continue to learn and grow together and become better within our businesses, and, better within our industries, and, can become more inclusive, more accessible, more kind of deconditioned, and just continue to unlearn together.
Well said. Wonderful. What a great start to the day.
Okay, thanks, babe.
Thank you for listening. It's great to have you with me on this journey towards higher love for all. Our time is our greatest commodity and gift, so thanks for investing it in yourself and sharing it with me. Please do take a moment to rate and review the show, all of which enables more people to find me and for me to connect with more great guests each week for both yours and my enjoyment. All links, references and contact information is detailed too within the show notes. And I always love to hear your feedback. So feel free to hit me up on my Instagram at higherlove_with_Megan or via my website, higher-love.com. Send your takeaways, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share or send on to someone else who would benefit. Until next time, big love.